Elder, and I am with my dear friend Greg Potzer, who we've been friends for over 23 years now. And I am just so thankful and so excited to share with you his new book, but even more than that, his ministry and his life, and just some of our friendship too. And Greg, I'm so glad to have you here. I want to ask you about your ministry because you have, for many years, been collecting quotes. Christian quotes, inspirational quotes, quotes that really have given you hope and courage. And you've been sharing those and sharing them literally around the world with tens of thousands of people and on a daily basis for 25 years. And but that all started when you were very young. And can you tell us just a bit about how this even started?
Yes, and when I was really young as a child, I really wasn't a reader. In fact, I think I was behind my classmates. But somewhere around high school and early college years, that changed. So I became more of an avid reader and became kind of addicted to the printed word, I guess. Along in that time period, maybe when I was in high school, my mother suggested that if I saw something in a book, a thought or a quotation or something that was meaningful to me, I should take out a 3x5 card. Remember, this is before computers, and keep a record. Note as people do, journal or whatever way their method is, to keep that thought and record it. So that's what I began doing. And I started doing that more and more, and to the degree that I started having these library drawers. Remember the old library card catalogs, with the 3x5 cards? Well, I started storing a lot of my thoughts, quotations that way. And that was back in that was, many back in the 70s that I was started, or 60s, I was even doing that. And a lot of those were Christian thoughts. Eventually, as I was born again and accepted the Lord in my 30s, I guess it was. So sometime around the year 2000, maybe the late, 1998 or up to 2000, I had a friend here in Colorado. He was a Christian businessman, and he had secured a computer and a server, and he was developing an email list for his business. And I asked him if I could piggyback on with what he had in place in his office. And so I thought that maybe I could start sharing some of my collected thoughts. If these thoughts had been of help to me, I was hopeful that they could be of help to others. It was just my own personal collection that I had in place. And he allowed me to do that. So then I started what I called This Day's Thought. And that started January of the year 2000. And I remember my first subscriber, I don't even know if I knew, yeah, I think I did know. It may have even been Bonnie Ricks, Eric. But in any case, I started with one and one became 10, and it started that way. And I started inviting people, mentioning it, and the list started to grow. And I started it, and I still do to this day. I send out a short daily devotional Monday through Friday. We used to do sermons, which you used to author, Eric, which were such a blessing. Now it's been simplified back to just Monday through Friday, and it's a short devotional. I try to keep it bite-size, a Christian quotation, a Bible verse, and sometimes a smile or a second quotation of some sort. Quick and easy to read, kind of a Christian seed for the day. So I started back in 2000, and then 1 or 2 years later, I had the good fortune to be able to go to Florida, where there was an internet conference of sorts, and it was a Christian internet conference. And I can't recall the exact year, but I met this really extraordinary man from Illinois who heard my story. I sat by him randomly, I think, at one of the lunches, one of our breakouts, and told him about what I was doing. And at that time, I had 1,200 people on my list, 1,200 subscribers. And he kind of smiled because, from an internet standpoint, even back then, that wasn't a huge group of people. And I think he teased me a little bit. And this gentleman who I met looks a lot like you, Eric. Um, it, it was actually you who I met, and you had, but you shared a lot, and you came from, the special background of having a heart for the Lord, and you were engaged in so many ministry efforts, but you also merged that with your technical abilities and then your formal training with the internet and HTML and website design and all of those things. So you were rather special. You were special then and you're special now, as you remained, Eric. But you started to help me and consult with me and guide me along, which I needed because I'm not a technical person. I administer an internet ministry, and I'm just not very good with the technical side. So that's a little strange.
You're really good with card catalogs, though, and 3x5 cards.
Yeah, I was good at that. I was good with 3x5 cards. And but I'm a content person. I enjoy quotations, I enjoy reading, and so then the list grew, and for many years I was operating as This Day's Thought, and I became a 501c3 nonprofit Christian ministry a few years into me developing the ministry. At one point, for 5 years, maybe, Eric, you and I actually joined forces, and you were helping me under your umbrella, of the ranch. Then we decided it was better maybe to be separate again because of all you were involved with, and made more sense to be independent again. We still always kept our independent 501c3s, but so for the last number of years, I've been operating as that ministry, and just this year is our 25th year, where after a number of years where you had helped me develop and offer a series of books at different times, a collection of the 250 best quotations that we've shared, or the favorite 500, over whatever years. So you've helped me with some of those volumes, but then just recently, this year was my largest one so far, and the most extensive, and that's this one, which is 2,500 favorite Christian quotations as shared over the last 25 years. And this was quite an effort that I've been blessed by, and the ministry has been blessed by, because of you, Eric. There was no way I was going to be able to bring something like this together. I had the quotations, but the quotations couldn't be shared unless you had helped as you did. So thank you again for that. So this was, we finished this a few months ago, Eric, and I started to already sell it, to promote it to the ministry list, and have sold some. And that's, if I sold one or had one person want it, it was worth the effort. Now I've paused because we're doing our fundraising this month, but in December, I'll kind of relaunch it and announce it again for Christmas. People might enjoy giving their loved ones a book of this nature, or to their pastors or church staff, that sort of thing. It's a lot of quotations. It makes me tired looking at it. So I don't know how everyone else looks at it. It's a lot of thought in there. So that's a little bit of the overview, I guess, in broad strokes, from day one to where we are now, 25 years later, with This Day's Thought. I'm primarily the person. I guess I am This Day's Thought, but that's so inaccurate because there have been so many volunteers and helpers and technical people. You've been most of that, Eric, but people who've helped me from time to time with website, with the technical aspects of running an email list, dealing with AOL and Yahoo, and all the email types of consequences and challenges, to promoting it, Google search engine, consequences, and just it goes on and on and on. Um, so a lot of people have helped me over the years and continue to help me, which I'm very blessed by.
Wonderful. That is a super overview. Super, super. Exactly what I think people need to hear. What I want to draw out of that is you took a very simple concept, something that blessed you when you were younger, and through your mother's encouragement and just writing these down, and and then you turned it into a ministry to bless others too. And you've told me over the years, and even recently, you said this never feels like a chore. It never feels like work. Actually, figuring out which quote you're going to share every day for 25 years. You've shared a quote a day every weekday, and two quotes often, and then the Bible verse you add in there. And so you're selecting them every day. And I've said, Greg, you could pre-program these and have a whole month, and you just spend one day working on it, and then it'll automatically go out every day for a month. And you said, no, I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy praying that morning, thinking through it, looking at which quote I want to use next. And you really select these. You really are a great curator of these thoughts and quotes. Your list is very special. They're very thoughtful quotes. A lot of times I will just sit and think about that quote for half an hour. I'll come back to it again throughout the day. People have written back to me because when we were publishing them together over the years, people would write back, thinking I selected these quotes, and they'd always just tell me, Eric, that quote just meant so much. I look so much forward to these every single day because they always give me just what I need for that day. Or, it's just so, they're really very well curated. And it's just a collection that I think is fascinating. And tell us how you've collected these quotes over the years, because it's not just like you're just like, oh, I have a quotation ministry, so I grab a quote anywhere I find a quote. I mean, how do you go about finding the quotes that you find?
Well,
What's
yeah,
meaningful?
and to it goes back, I think, Eric, to because I read extensively, I guess, and I've always read more nonfiction. I just gravitate that way, I suppose. And so, not that I wouldn't have good quotes from novels or fiction either, but I just read a lot, and I read everything. I mean, I read books, magazines, I read on the internet. I just read. No, I don't read 8 hours a day, but I just gravitate towards that. There've been quote books that I've gone to, but even that becomes kind of a science, I guess, as far as which books, which types of books, which authors primarily, and I try to, as well as I can, know the author that I'm quoting. There's a lot of thought that goes into that, and that's just in one example where if I quote an author, I'm endorsing to a degree. I have all of these mostly Christian readers. Some of them are seekers who are not yet Christians, but primarily it's Christian readership. And so if I quote someone, well, they might say, well, Greg agrees with this person or agrees with the author's philosophy. And often I do, but I have to be aware of that when I choose a quotation. If there's something that could be confusing to the reader with that sort of passive endorsement. My point is sometimes the Lord, I believe, will use a quotation or a thought from someone who's not a Christian. There's passages in the Bible, of course, where the Lord uses everyone to his purpose and his means and to his end. And that includes non-Christians, unbelievers too. So I don't rule anything out necessarily. My choice of quote, as I kind of departed a little bit from your question, Eric, but can this thought be of help to people in their daily walk with the Lord? Can it be of help? And sometimes they're uplifting, sometimes they're really challenging. But can it be of help in their walk with the Lord? And I've also, in closing on that topic, I'm just kind of a regular guy, but I've had enough blessings in my life to be matched by many disappointments and sin and many mistakes too. I've had my ups and my downs. I've had kind of a well-rounded life in that respect. I'm 69 years old. So what I'm doing is very subjective. These are what I think are good.
Mm.
Eric, you would have a slightly different collection of quotes, and so would everyone in your room. All of you would have something that would resonate different. Many of them could be commonly enjoyed by all of us, but it's subjective. So I'm the one choosing. But I think when I wonder why the Lord's allowed me to do this, I'm just kind of an average guy, and at an average time in my life that has probably more life experience and wisdom than a 20-year-old and less than an 80-year-old. I'm just that way. So I'm going to then probably choose some things that are going to resonate and help kind of a broad group of people. It kind of wider in scope than narrower, perhaps, just because I've had enough things to reflect on that affect what I feel is important or that's helping me at a particular time, if that makes sense.
Very much, very much. Yeah.
But there is a lot of thought that goes into it. Yeah. And that's by design, but it's not work. I mean, I love doing it. And you said it correctly before. There's not been in 25 years, I can't remember many days, if any, that I thought, boy, I have to get this out and get this out early. So, because of people's time zones and stuff and all my considerations there, that I just really don't want to do this. I don't think there's ever been a time like that. So
Yeah.
that's a blessing for me.
Amazing and wonderful. Not to say technical glitches don't drive us crazy, but that's a different issue. That's not the collection and getting it out there. But
no, I know. Well, and you know me well enough now, Eric, that if there's anything that drains me is when I get on the computer and I don't have a connection, or my email list is broken, or something's malfunctioning. It just drives me nuts, and it really is draining because I want to be consistent and on time with people, and I don't want too many hiccups along those lines, of course. And that's when you get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that sort of thing. So
well, I love that you just read a lot, and then you just run across a quote as you're reading a book, and the number of times you've told me, "Oh, I just got back from the library and I'm reading this book about." Every time I hear Greg talk about these books he gets at the library, or you go to old book sales, or you pick up so many things. I mean, you've had hundreds of books, thousands of books. I mean, your place was filled. You had bookshelves and bookshelves of books, and you've moved them around and sold them and done lots of things, given them away, but you read a lot.
Well, and one of the things that I feel I should have done and I never did, and I still haven't started, although I may. I wish I would have recorded every title and author that I've read, because now I don't remember. And so I'm rereading. There was someone who wrote a wonderful book on walking in England, and it was really a thoughtful book. And she wrote another book earlier that won many awards called The Salt something or other. You guys may recognize. Well, I got all excited because I wanted to read her first book because I enjoyed her second book so much. Well, I had read her first book and I didn't remember that. So I got into it. I've read this already.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And I have read and then I have used so many of your quotes over the years. And, since I think the conference was in 2000, if I remember, maybe it wasn't quite that year, but it was about then that I met you. And I actually wasn't teasing Greg about it. I came from a Fortune 3 corporation where I was doing their first website design and email list and all that stuff. And Greg asked if, maybe I could help him with his list. And I'm like, oh gosh, it's sort of a little outside of my realm. But then he's like, it's 1,200 people. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah, that's no problem. That's not too big. Greg took it as, oh, that's not too big. I worked for you several years to get to 1,200 people.
Yeah, I was very proud of that 1,200 number.
I know you thought I was dissing you. I was not. I was just like, I could actually do this. Maybe I could help the guy. And we got that up to 40,000 people around the world at one point. And
so your group knows there, Eric. I like to tease you whenever we get together like this. I tell the same story because I just like to tease you about it. So,
and he still doesn't believe my disclaimer. I was not making fun of it. That's fine. That's why. I, I really love your book, and I've read so many of your quotes, and then I use them in my talks. I speak and I write, and I mean they have appeared in so many of my books, and the thoughts have just impacted me. And as a speaker and a writer, you're always jotting down quotes and things that speak to you because you want to share those with others too. And I know your messages go even beyond the tens of thousands of people because you hear back from people that say, every day I share this with 50 people in my own list, or I share this in my church bulletin, or I've shared this in my sermons, and that reaches however many dozens or hundreds or thousands of people. And so your quotes just keep going around the world and around the world. And I think it's fascinating. But this book, I was asking, how did you get down to the 2,500 and how many did you start with? And you said you probably shared over 10,000 quotes over the years, over these 25 years in the daily thing. You've gathered, you've curated, and then you've shared 10,000, and then you narrowed it down over the past year at least. I think it was a year or more
Oh,
project
yeah, yeah.
of
It was, Eric. It was about over 2 years almost that you're right. I kind of started the editing process and I started from scratch. I thought I'm going to re-review everything that I had in all these different databases and previously, compiled books and so forth. And the 2,500 was kind of an arbitrary. I mean, it's 25 years. I didn't have a goal of 2,500 quotes, but those are the favorites. Those are the ones that I thought were best. So it was only one out of four that I used over those 10,000. And you pointed out over 25 years, I did. Mathematically, you can calculate how many quotes I shared. Mondays was maybe 2 quotes, and I figured all of that out. But to get to the 10,000 to the ministry over 25 years, there were a lot of other quotes and a lot of reading that just to get to that.
said you probably had 100,000 quotes that you got down to the 10,000 that you got down to now the 2,500.
Yeah,
But
it
I
was a
did have to
lot.
say this is really a beautifully curated list. And when we finished the book, and this is actually a photograph that he had taken that was special to him, and he dedicated the book to his mom, which I thought was beautiful too. But I have been reading this book, and I've shared it with a dear friend, and we have just been reading and reading some of these quotes, and it's just beautiful. I just set it by my bedside, and I just open it. I've got a nice bookmark that you also gave me for the book, and I just read a page, at night, or I read it 2 pages, or I just read whatever, maybe there's just one thought that just strikes me, and I just stop there. But I've read most of these quotes before, but they're brand new to me again because I'm going through different things. I'm in a different season of my life. I've got different situations, and they speak to me differently. And I just love this. A quote by Ed Dobson: "The more I read and pray, the more I want to read and pray. The less I read and pray, the less I want to read and pray." Here's an unknown quote: "God always gives the best to those who leave the choice with Him." It just seems like each quote I read, I just keep putting stars by and circle, and uh, I just love this. Here's one: J. Hudson Taylor. "I can only lie still in God's arms. I am so weak that I can hardly write. I cannot read my Bible. I cannot even pray. I can only lie still in God's arms like a little child and trust." J. Hudson Taylor, the famous missionary during his final days. Once you read the ending, I go back and I read it again, and I go, "I can only lie still in God's arms. I am so weak I can hardly write. I cannot read my Bible. I cannot even pray. I can only lie still in God's arms and like a little child and trust." J. Hudson Taylor during his final days. And I just read it again and I read it again, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that spoke to my heart so much that day, because I was just like, God, I'm so overwhelmed today. I don't know what to do next. I can't even get up. I can't even read my Bible. I can't even pray. I can only lie and trust. And I go, I am the worst Christian in the world. And then I go, oh gosh, J. Hudson Taylor said that after
Yeah.
a life of missionary work. They're just thoughtful quotes that just strike me. And I just keep reading and reading. And I could just go through, I've highlighted so many. This one, I'm just doing this on the end. J. Wilbur Chapman: "Look for strengths in people, not weaknesses, for good, not in evil. most of us find what we search for.
Yes. Yes.
Another quote, if you
Yeah.
look for the bad in someone, you're sure to find it.
Yeah.
It's not in your book, but it's, I just love this. Most of us find what we search for.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, there's lots of things I could search for. Delicate humor is the crowning virtue of the saints. Evelyn Underhill. Delicate humor is the crowning virtue of the saints. And I just think about that and I go, what does she mean by delicate humor and being the crowning virtue of the saints? And then I think, oh my gosh, to me, that speaks volumes about, it's not crass humor or brash humor or, body humor. It's like, as a Christian, we can have a levity, we can have a lightness of being, we can have a peace even in the midst of chaos, and we can have a delicate humor about us. We can share a little joke here and there. Not a joke even, but a smile. And I don't know how it strikes you, but each
No, and that's a good point. And Eric, and kindness. I think that's what struck me about that one too.
kindness.
To
Mm.
maintain kindness
Oh,
in your
humor as a
human.
temperament, as a temperament.
Exactly. And
Mm.
that also, Eric, that also raises a point too, where sometimes when I'll have shared a certain quote, I'll get a comment back saying, well, we're confused, or we don't know how to interpret that, or that can be interpreted a couple of ways, Greg. Which is it? Well, then I'll respond back and say, well, this is the way I felt, but
Mm.
it could mean something differently to someone else. It could
Mm.
still feed them in a certain way differently than it may have fed me. And again, I don't presume to know exactly, what the author was intending or trying to convey, but I can certainly say, well, this is how it spoke to me. And sometimes people will be critical and say, well, I don't like that for this reason. And I say, I can understand that. It spoke to me differently, and that's why I shared it. We'll have a little bit of a dialogue. And I don't discount their feeling or how it spoke or didn't speak to them either. There's
Mm.
that element with the spoken word or with the written word or spoken word. So
That's funny because
it's interesting. One
now
other,
that you say that about that quote, I'm like, oh, Greg's right. That is delicate temperament, not
no,
delicate
well,
joke.
no, I
And I'm
like,
like, oh gosh, that's really what she meant. And I like
no,
that thought too. But yeah,
I,
it is interesting.
I,
You read it and I think about it. I'm like, what does that mean?
I like your interpretation better than mine, see, Eric. So I like the way, the other thing that struck me too, which is I know I've felt before, the Christian this day's thought is not meant to replace one's Bible reading. The Bible your study is the most important thing by far. You can't even compare it. These are men's words, men's and women's words that they through many of their writings. But it gives them some. So the Bible comes first, obviously,
Mm.
but with these thoughts, what sometimes can help people, it's other people, those same authors, Eric, had gone through whatever they had gone through, and they're sharing their thoughts. Well, they're sharing it's from one Christian to another Christian. Their ups and downs, their pain, their joy. And it's nice for Christians to read. What has Billy Graham said about this? What has Augustine said about this? Or Augustine sharing when he had good times and bad times, or his walk with the Lord. And so it's a nice additional type of possible study and devotional that
Mm.
again is not meant to take the place, just like when we would share Sunday sermons. It was never, although it did help where people who couldn't get out, who were restricted in their travel and so forth. But it's never meant to be but an additional type of devotion, but
Mm.
hopefully that's still meaningful for them. So
Mm. Mm. Mm.
yeah.
I'm going to share another. This is C.S. Lewis. I need Christ, not something that resembles him. Oh, golly. I need a
Yeah.
sacrifice. I don't need a good something. I need Christ, not
And
something that resembles him.
and one of the things the ministry does, by the way, that quote was probably shared. I discovered it and read it somewhere and shared it many, many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, because I just shared it again. Eric, you helped me with a new section, that's called This Day's Reprise. We chose the word reprise. This day's thought, this day's verse, this day's smile. And then we occasionally, every other day or so, I'll have this day's reprise. That C.S. Lewis quote was shared even today, I think, as a reprise. And it was a favorite of the favorites that I wanted to repeat. And doing so readers who are brand new will start to see and experience some of those. Someone who just subscribed last year, they've missed 24 years worth of quotations. So I'm repeating over time. That's the idea of ones that are particularly good. They're all perhaps good, but I wanted to share that many more. So that one repeated, Eric. I don't know if you knew that, but
It
today
happened to be today.
it
I've been at
appeared,
a
I think,
retreat
as
all day. I didn't know it was today's. That's astounding.
yeah.
Yeah, just that I pull it out.
So, but
And your main quote,
and
you
I
have
keep
not repeated
track.
any of your main quotes for 25 years. You use it once and that's it. So it's only recently you're adding this extra
Yeah, unless
bonus section that you have this reprise just to, but you have still not repeated
I'm
any quotes in your main quote.
no,
And you have no end. I'm like, well,
unless it was by
going to
accident.
run out by accident.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
how many quotes do you think you have left? You know, they're unending.
Well, it's endless. I mean, I still have volumes I can go through. I have a whole database of saved quotations that I think are worthy, but they haven't risen to the top yet to be shared. And I must have, 1,000 of those maybe. So there's different ways that I continue to collect and feed kind of my database and what goes to the top. And like you said, on that given morning, that's when I like to meditate and pray and reflect on, well, what do I want to share today? And I wait. I don't try to do that ahead of time. I could, and sometimes I have to if I'm traveling. But yeah, there's a lot of material that I hope not to run out if I'm going to do this for another 25 years. We'll see how long I go.
Wonderful.
At my age.
Let me add this quote too by an unknown author. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of quotes that just speak to me in that moment. And I just cry like I'm doing now. I just go, oh God, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. I receive these quotes and I take them into my own heart and then I share. There was a great ad for Bluebell ice cream when I lived down in Texas, and they said, "We eat all we can and we sell the rest."
That's really good.
I feel that way about these quotes. It's like I receive all I can and then I offer the rest. I'm like out of the overflow of our hearts. We speak. And that's what has happened with you as well. And do you mind me asking, and if you don't want to share this, that's fine. I can edit this out. But, why these quotes were so meaningful to you when you were younger, what you were going through. And if you don't want to share that, that's okay. But
I know, Eric, but see, I think I've gone through a lot in life, and as much as, well, people have gone through more than I have too. I was married. I was divorced later. That was very difficult. I've had lost friends, and just work was going really well. Work wasn't going very well. My career, I've had my ups and downs practically in most areas of one's life, which all of us have, to some degree or another. And again, that comes back to where I'm maybe a good person to be doing this, I suppose, is because I've had all of that within one's life. So financially, ups and downs, and just everything. But I don't look at, I consider that all good. And of course, as we all do, we learn more in life from the times when we're being challenged than we do in the times when we're not being challenged. So those were times of deep growth when there were issues and difficulties, and times of becoming that much closer to the Lord, of course, in the walk. It's a little harder sometimes for us to focus on when we should be when things are all going well, It's a little easier. Sometimes the Lord uses that to say, I need to have a little bit of a talk with Greg, so I'm going to get his attention. The Lord he's gotten my attention many a time. And I've been blessed by that. So.
Well, I love that. I mean, these quotes have been life to you, and you've eaten all you can, and you offer them to others as a ministry and a blessing out of the overflow of what they've spoken to you and how they've touched you and ministered to you. And I just love that. And I think, in some ways, it's such a simple ministry. You share a quote a day, every day, and then a Bible verse, and then a smile and a reprise. You've added to the collection, but it's
right.
You share a simple thought. And even initially I was like, oh, well, you really maybe a weekly something and bigger, and you've added devotionals, you've added sermons, you've added other things, but each time you sort of pare back to what stick to your knitting, you stick to what really is your core essential message, and that is, I want just a little nugget, a Christian seed for the day to help you with your Christian walk. And I think that's just beautiful that you've explored other ways and avenues and different kinds of things, but at the heart of it all, it's this day's thought, and it's this Christian quotation, a Christian seed for the day. And I love it. And I think if people want just encouragement for their own soul, get a copy of this. There's a paperback, there's a hardback if you want something that's even more durable, if you think you're going to be reading it over and over. It makes great encouragement for other people, for friends. Sometimes people are like, I don't have the strength or the time to read a whole novel or read even a whole whatever. You might give them a large volume, but you can give them this and say, read one a day, or read one when it strikes you, or keep it on your coffee table, keep it at your breakfast table, keep it by your bedside. And like I'm doing, I'm up to page 92 now. Out of how many pages did this turn out to be? 415 quotes. And I'm in no hurry to get done with this book. I just love just picking it up. And for me, it's at night as I'm getting ready to go to bed. And I just, I read your emails every morning because they come in the morning, and I love that. And that gets me, inspired and gives me a seed for the day. But just at night, and I just make notes next to it and date it and go, this really spoke to me. And it's just been a blessing to me personally, but also if you're an author or a speaker or a writer or a preacher, or you have a ministry, it just so helps to sprinkle quotes throughout what you do, not just your thoughts, but to add other thoughts of Christians throughout the ages. You go back to Augustine, you go back to the early Christian fathers, and you just have a lot of things over the millennia that are helpful to people. And so I just encourage people to grab it, get a copy. It speaks so much to me. And any closing thoughts you have, Greg, and then I'll say a little goodbye.
No, but my thanks, Eric, to you. All the technical and the types of work that it takes to put together a book is enormous. I spent a lot of time on the books, but we spent a lot of time just putting it into these formats. So I thank you. It's a blessing to so many people because it is now available in a book, and that's been a joy too. So thank you for all of that wonderful work.
Thanks so much, Greg. And I just want to say a personal thanks to you. And I could go on and on, but you have been such a good friend to me, encourager. We've walked through life together over these last 20 some years, and through the difficult times and the joyful times. And even last week, you're walking me through life situations that I'm wrestling out, and you've walked some of these paths before. You've been a mentor to me and a friend to me, and I know I've been a friend to you, an encourager to you too. And I just want to say thank you so much. Thanks so much for being my friend. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.